I found out about my brother's wedding long before anyone actually told me, and maybe that's why it still feels like someone twisted a knife under my ribs. It happened in the most ordinary place in our small town, the parking lot of Miller's Market, the kind of store where the cashier knows your mom, your dog, and your embarrassing high school nickname. It was a gray Wednesday afternoon, one of those days where the sky hangs low like it's too tired to rain. I just wanted to run inside, grab coffee and a frozen dinner, and disappear back home. But then I saw them. My younger brother, Nate, my ex, Lauren, and the look they shared, quick, familiar, almost intimate. Like two people who had learned each other's rhythms, not two people who bumped into each other on a random afternoon. I didn't hear what they said. I didn't walk over. I just stood there, half hidden behind a row of cars, holding a plastic bag that suddenly felt too heavy. At that moment, I didn't know anything. Not that they'd been seeing each other for 6 months. Not that they'd already talked about a wedding. Not that my entire family would soon sit me down and tell me I needed to be Nate's best man, because family sticks together. Back then, all I knew was a raw, stupid punch in my chest. The thing is, Lauren and I ended things 2 years ago. Badly. She told me I turned into a ghost, that I worked too much, shut myself off, drifted through our home like someone who kept forgetting to come back to his own life. I told her she was overreacting. I told myself we were fine. I told everyone we'd get through it. But love doesn't end in decorations. It ends in small moments you don't notice until later. Like the night she fell asleep facing the wall, not me, or the morning she didn't make coffee for two, or the moments when she looked at me like she was waiting for a version of me that never showed up. When she finally packed her bags, she cried. I didn't. And that's what scared her the most, I think. I cried later, months later, in the driver's seat of my truck outside my work, where no one could see me. No one except myself, and that was enough. I thought I'd moved on. I thought I'd buried everything we were. But standing there on that quiet, gray afternoon, watching Nate lean in a little too close while Lauren laughed a little too softly, something inside me shifted. Not anger. Not yet. Just a cold, heavy knowing this was going to hurt. More than I was prepared for. I didn't confront him in the parking lot. I didn't call Nate. I didn't text Lauren. I just went home, put the grocery bag on the kitchen counter, and stared at the wall for a long time, listening to the refrigerator hum like it was filling the silence for me. You'd think after 2 years I'd be immune. Breakups fade, right? People move on. That's what everyone said. But no one tells you what to do when the past doesn't stay buried, when it walks right into your family like it has a key. That night, I couldn't stop replaying things I'd forgotten I remembered. The first time I kissed Lauren, the way she used to tuck her hair behind her ear when she was nervous, the argument we had the week before she left, when she told me she felt like she was dating a man who was slowly disappearing. I laughed it off, which only made her cry harder. I thought she'd be in my future. Maybe that's a pathetic part. Even after the breakup, even after the silence, some stupid part of me always pictured running into her in some bigger city, older but still familiar, and we'd talk politely, warmly, like two people who had loved each other once and survived it. But I never imagined she'd cross paths with my brother. I didn't sleep well for days. Every time I closed my eyes, images flickered through my mind like an old, broken film reel. Lauren at my brother's side, Lauren at our family table, Lauren slipping into conversations she used to have with me. I told myself I was being dramatic. Small towns recycle people. That's just how it is. Everyone dates someone's ex. Everyone ends up connected in weird, uncomfortable ways. But that logic didn't help. Logic rarely does when feeling is involved. The truth is, I didn't want her back. Not really. I just didn't want to see her move on with him. Because Nate wasn't just my brother. He was a golden child. The one who never screwed up, never missed a holiday, never disappointed our parents. He had that effortless charm that made him the favorite without him even trying. Growing up, he was the kid teachers adored, the kid neighbors trusted, the kid who could get away with murder just by smiling and saying he didn't mean it. I wasn't jealous. Not exactly. I was just used to being the shadow behind him. And maybe that's why I felt like a betrayal in advance. Like I already knew something was happening without having the details yet. For days after the parking lot, the details arrived in the most predictable way possible. A text from my mom. Family dinner this Sunday. Everyone. No excuses. Which, translated from mom language, meant something big is happening. And she doesn't want a repeat of the Christmas incident. That's when I skipped the family party because I had the flu, and she acted like I committed a federal crime. I stared at the text for a long time. Part of me wanted to say I couldn't make it. Part of me wanted to pretend I was busy, sick, dead, anything, but avoiding it would only make whatever this was worse. So I typed the only thing I could. Yeah, see you. And for the next 3 days, my stomach stayed in a tight, sour knot. I didn't know how right I was to be nervous. I didn't know how much of my life was about to unravel. I didn't know that this dinner, this stupid, predictable family dinner, was going to be the beginning of the most painful chapter of my adult life. I drove to my parent house on Sunday with that same uneasy feeling you get before a dentist appointment, knowing something is going to hurt, but having no idea how badly. Their house looked exactly the same as it always did. Same porch light that flickered even though Dad insisted he'd fix it tomorrow. Same wind chimes Lauren once bought my mom for her birthday. The ones that made a soft, metallic song whenever the breeze passed over the yard. I hesitated before knocking. For a moment, I actually considered turning around and leaving, pretending I forgot, pretending my phone died, pretending anything. But then the door swung open. "Hey, there he is," Dad said, tugging me into one of those half hugs that lasted just long enough to feel polite. Inside, the smell of roasted chicken and rosemary filled the house. Mom was fussing with the table, smoothing the tablecloth, adjusting forks that didn't need adjusting. Nate wasn't there yet. Neither was Lauren, but their absence said enough. "Sit, sit," Mom urged, like I was a guest and not her son who'd eaten at this table thousands of times. I sat. Dad poured me a drink. Nobody said anything meaningful. Just small talk, weather, work, a new neighbor who built a fence too close to the property line. And then the front door opened. Nate walked in first. Tall, confident, smiling the way he always did, like he'd never once worried about being disliked. And behind him came Lauren. She looked almost exactly the same. Same soft brown hair. Same quiet presence. Same gentle smile that had once felt like home. For a split second, our eyes met. She gave me a small nod, polite, distant, careful, and I forced myself to nod back. We sat down to dinner, and the air felt thick enough to choke on. Mom kept glancing between us, waiting for something. Nate cleared his throat once. Then again, he wasn't usually nervous. That was more my thing, so the tension was obvious. Finally, he put his hand on Lauren's, and everything inside me went still. "So," he said, eyes moving from our parents to me, "we have some news." Mom already had tears in her eyes. Dad was smiling proudly. I didn't breathe. "We're getting married," Nate said. Lauren looked down, almost like she felt guilty. Maybe she did. Mom gasped, dramatically, because she'd known for weeks. Dad raised his glass. Everyone reacted the way families react in moments like this. Everyone except me. I felt nothing, or maybe too much. It's hard to tell the difference sometimes. "That's big news," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. Nate kept looking at me, the way someone looks at a ticking bomb. They hope won't explode. He opened his mouth to say something else, but Mom cut in first. Of course she did. "And we have something else to celebrate," she said, clapping her hands together. "Your brother has agreed to be the best man." I stared at her, then at Nate, then at Lauren. Nate swallowed. "Mom," he said gently, "I didn't ask him yet." "Oh, please," she waved him off. "Of course he'll do it. He's your brother." The room felt like it tilted. The air pressed against my chest. Lauren's face tightened, like she was bracing for impact. And Nate, God, even now, I remember the look on his face. Hope, fear, a silent plea. "Will you?" he asked quietly. "Be my best man?" Silence. Long, heavy silence. In that moment, I wasn't thinking about being mature or gracious or noble. I wasn't thinking about family or tradition or obligations. I was thinking about Lauren's toothbrush next to mine, her handwriting on sticky notes on our fridge, her voice saying she didn't recognize me anymore, her crying while she packed her bags, the way she wouldn't look at me the day she left. And now she was sitting there, holding my brother's hand, waiting for me to bless the life they'd built on the ashes of ours. "I need a minute," I finally said. I stood up, pushed my chair in, and walked out the back door. I don't remember closing it behind me. Outside, the air was cold enough to sting. My parents' backyard looked exactly like it had when I was a kid. The old maple tree, the rusting grill, the lawn my dad always swore he'd reseed next spring. I leaned against the railing, trying to breathe, really breathe, not the shallow, shaky kind that pretends to keep you alive. I heard the screen door creak, open behind me. Of course it was Mom. She stepped outside like she was entering a battlefield, hands folded over her chest, face pinched with irritation disguised as concern. "What was that?" she whispered sharply. "You walked out in the middle of your brother's announcement." "Yeah," I said quietly. "I know." She waited, expecting me to apologize. When I didn't, she sighed. "Honey, I know this is awkward for you," she said, lowering her voice. "But you and Lauren ended things a long time ago. 2 years is not a long time when you spent for building a life with someone." Mom stepped closer, touching my arm. "You have to be supportive. This is a happy moment." "For who?" I asked. "Them?" "Yes, for them." She snapped, as if that should be obvious. "Your brother is in love." And Lauren is practically part of this family already. That line hit harder than anything she'd said so far. Part of this family. I stared out over the yard, jaw clenched. She was part of my life first. I finally said, Mom's face tightened. You can't hold on to something that's over. I'm not holding on, I said through my teeth. I just didn't expect her to end up with my brother. It wasn't planned, she said. But life happens. People move on. She said it gently, but still felt like she punched a hole through my ribs. Then she added, and your reaction in there, it wasn't fair. I laughed once. Quiet, bitter. Not fair. You embarrassed Nate, she said. He didn't deserve that. I turned to look at her fully. I embarrassed him, I repeated slowly, by not immediately agreeing to stand beside him while he marries my ex. Mom's eyes hardened. This family sticks together, she said, and Nate wants you as his best man. What about what I want? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Mom blinked, as if the thought had never occurred to her. This isn't about what you want. Don't make it about you. That was the moment something inside me cracked. Not broke, cracked, like a hairline fracture that you don't see until it spreads. From inside the house, the door opened again. Nate stepped out. Mom immediately softened, switching from scolding mode to nurturing mode in half a second. I'll give you two a moment, she said, touching Nate's shoulder as she went inside. Nate walked over slowly. He didn't look angry. He didn't even look defensive. He looked sad. I'm sorry you found out like that, he said. Like what? I asked. You two getting married or Mom announcing I'm your best man without asking me? He winced. Both, I guess. We stood there in silence, the porch light flickering above us. Finally, he said, I didn't plan any of this, man. That's what everyone keeps saying. It's the truth. Lauren and I, we ran into each other a few times. Then we talked. Then it just happened. Happened. Like rainfall. Like a car accident. Why didn't you tell me earlier? I asked. He swallowed hard. Because I knew it would hurt you. I stared at him, waiting for the rest. And I said, and I didn't know how to say it without sounding like a jerk, he admitted. At least that part was honest. Then he took a shaky breath. But I want you there. I want you standing next to me. You're my brother. My brother. The phrase didn't comfort me. If anything, it made the guilt worse. Because despite everything, despite the betrayal, the shock, the unresolved pain, a part of me still loved him, still wanted him happy, still didn't want to be the reason our family fractured. And he knew it. He knew exactly which strings to pull. I'm not saying yes, I said. Not tonight. He nodded, looking relieved I hadn't said no. Okay, just think about it. He went back inside. I stayed outside until my fingers went numb. I didn't sleep well after that dinner. I didn't sleep well for a long time. Every night felt like someone had turned on a projector in my skull, replaying old memories in no particular order, overlapping, distorted, too vivid in some places and blurry in others. The worst part wasn't the sadness. It was a confusion, because I wasn't in love with Lauren anymore. Not the way I was. Not the way that keeps you awake at night, dreaming about a future that still feels possible. But grief doesn't disappear just because love changes shape. Some memories don't fade. They lie dormant, quiet, patient. And the moment something stirs them, a familiar smell, a place, a person, they rise like smoke. That week, everything reminded me of her. I'd pour coffee into the mug she bought me. I'd pass the street where we used to walk after dinner. I'd see couples in the grocery store arguing about pasta sauce or laughing at something stupid. And it would hit me how much a life you build in tiny, forgettable moments. I remember the night Lauren and I first said, I love you. It wasn't romantic or planned. We were sitting in my old truck outside her apartment. It was raining, the kind that blurs streetlights and makes everything look softer. She was telling me about her dad, how he left when she was 12, how every birthday after that felt like some kind of personal failure, as if her worth was tied to his absence. When she cried, I held her, and she whispered, almost like a confession, please don't disappear on me. I promised I wouldn't. But promises are easy when you don't yet understand the kind of things that turn you into a person who disappears. Work, stress, burnout, depression you don't have a name for because you think it's just being tired. I didn't cheat on her. I didn't lie to her. I didn't hurt her on purpose. I just wasn't present. And eventually, that was enough. 2 years later, I was still angry at myself for that. For letting something real slip through my fingers because I didn't know how to carry it. And now, she was marrying my brother. The most painful part wasn't losing her. It was knowing that someone else, someone so close to me, was giving her the version of love I couldn't. I tried avoiding Nate that week. Tried avoiding family. Tried avoiding my own reflection. But small towns don't let you hide. Everyone knows everything before you do. At the gas station, someone said, hey, heard your brother's getting married. You must be excited. At work. Your ex? Small world, huh? At the bar. So what's it like, man, being the best man for the guy marrying your old flame? People said it with smiles, like it was a sitcom plot, not a slow-motion emotional collapse. A few nights later, I found myself driving without a destination and ended up parked outside the old lake, the one where Lauren and I used to go in the summer, where she'd float on her back and tell me she wished time could stop just for a few minutes so she could rest. I sat on the hood of my truck and stared at the water. For the first time in years, I let myself imagine what would have happened if we'd stayed together. A house, kids, weekends at this lake. Maybe I'd have learned how to be better. Maybe she wouldn't have drifted away. Maybe I wouldn't be sitting alone in the dark, replaying what-ifs like a broken record. But imagining doesn't change history. It just makes the present hurt more. 2 days later, Lauren texted me. The message was short. Can we talk? I stared at it for a long time. Too long. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I didn't want to see her. I didn't want to open wounds that were barely scar tissue. I didn't want to hear explanations, apologies, or reassurances that it just happened. But part of me, the part that still remembered her laugh echoing in my kitchen at midnight, wanted closure. Or maybe punishment. Or maybe just understanding. I didn't know, but I typed back, yeah, when? She replied almost immediately, tomorrow? The coffee shop on Main. The same coffee shop where we used to go every Sunday morning. I almost said no, but something deeper than pride, deeper than pain, deeper than logic answered for me. Okay. When I put my phone down, my hand was shaking. I wasn't ready, but the truth was coming, whether I wanted it or not. The next morning, I got to the coffee shop early. I don't know why. Maybe because I didn't want her to see me walk in nervous and unprepared. Maybe because sitting alone for a few minutes felt easier than sitting across from her without any kind of buffer. The place hadn't changed. Same faded chalkboard menu. Same smell of espresso and cinnamon. Same uneven table in the corner where she used to tease me for always choosing the wobbly one. I didn't sit there. Not today. She arrived right on time. Lauren walked in quietly, like she didn't want the room to notice her. She'd always been like that. Soft-spoken, thoughtful, gentle in a way that made the world around her feel louder. Her eyes met mine, and for a second neither of us moved. Then she smiled, small, hesitant. Hey! Hey! We sat. For a moment, she just held her cup, turning it slowly between her palms. I could tell she didn't know where to start. Finally, she said, thank you for coming. I almost didn't. I know. She looked down at her drink. I wanted to talk because things got messy, fast. And you deserve more than to hear everything the way you did. You think I didn't know something was happening? My voice came out rougher than I meant. She didn't flinch. Lauren never flinched from honesty. I knew you might have seen us, she said softly. That day at the market. I felt awful. You didn't look awful, I said, surprised at myself at how sharp it sounded. She swallowed. I was nervous, she admitted. I wasn't trying to hide anything. I didn't know how to face you. I leaned back in my chair. Why him? I didn't mean it accusatory. It came out tired, defeated. She took a slow breath. It wasn't planned. I swear. That seems to be the theme lately. She nodded. I know how it sounds. And I know how it must feel. But Nate, he was there when I was trying to put myself back together. And I wasn't, I said quietly. It's not that simple. But we both knew it kind of was. You hurt me, she said. And her voice trembled just a little. Not in a dramatic way. Not in a cruel way. You hurt me by shutting me out, without even realizing you were doing it. She looked up finally, meeting my eyes. You didn't talk to me anymore. You stopped sharing things. You stopped being you. I felt like a stranger living with a stranger. I didn't offend myself. There wasn't anything to defend. I know, I said, and I meant it. But Nate, he listened. He asked about things. He cared in a way I hadn't felt in a long time. It stung. Of course it did. But it wasn't malicious. Just honest. And yes, she added, voice softer now, I did feel guilty. For a long time. I still do. You were important to me. I echoed. She nodded. We're not trying to hurt you, she said. But we fell in love. Slowly. Carefully. And we didn't want it to feel like a betrayal. Even though I know that's what it is to you. I didn't realize my hands had curled into fists until I forced them to relax. So, what do you want from me? I asked. Understanding, she said quietly. And maybe forgiveness. Eventually. I let out a humorless laugh. That might take a while. I know, she whispered. We sat there in silence for a long moment. Then I forced myself to ask the question twisting in my chest. Was I ever enough for you? Her eyes filled with tears. You were, she said, but you stopped being enough for yourself. and I didn't know how to save us without losing myself. I nodded slowly. It wasn't the answer I wanted, but it was the truth. Before we could say anything else, the bell above the door jingled. I didn't have to turn around and know who it was. Nate. He walked toward us cautiously, like approaching a wounded animal. "Hey," he said, voice small. "Can I sit?" I didn't say yes. I didn't say no. He took the empty chair. "This wasn't planned," he said quickly. "I'm getting tired of that sentence." I muttered. He scrubbed a hand over his face. I know this is shitty, and I'm not here to defend myself or pretend it's not weird." "Then what are you here for?" I don't know. Be honest. Explain. Something." Lauren watched him, nervous. He looked at me, eyes tired. "I didn't chase her. I swear I didn't. She wasn't a fantasy or some prize. It just happened. I met her when she was hurting, and talking to her felt real. And then it turned into more." "And you didn't think to tell me?" "I wanted to," he said, 100 times. "But every time I tried, I imagined losing you. I imagined you cutting me out, and I freaked out. So you hid it." "Yeah," he admitted. "I did." He leaned forward. "But I don't want to keep hiding. I don't want us to be strangers." The anger I expected didn't come. Just a heavy, exhausted sadness. "I don't know if I can be happy for you," I said. "I'm not asking you to be," he replied. "I'm just asking you not to hate me." I didn't answer. He exhaled slowly. "Whatever you decide about the wedding, I'll respect it." Lauren nodded beside him. I looked at them, two people I once loved in very different ways, and felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, not acceptance, just a simple, painful recognition that life wasn't going backwards. Before I left, Lauren touched my hand gently, almost like a goodbye. "We don't expect peace," she whispered, "but I hope someday you won't look at us and only feel hurt." I didn't trust my voice enough to reply, so I just stood up, nodded once, and walked out. The cold air outside hit me like a wave, but for the first time in weeks, I felt something like clarity. Not healing, not closure, just clarity. I didn't sleep the night before I had to give my answer. I kept pacing around my kitchen, touching the back of the chair she used to sit in, opening the fridge just to close again, staring at my phone every few minutes like some message was going to magically appear and make the choice for me. But no message came. Around 6 a.m., when the sky was that washed-out blue that feels like a bruise healing, I finally stopped moving. I sat on the floor, leaned my back against the cabinets, and let myself feel everything at once. Anger, grief, affection, nostalgia, exhaustion. All the things I'd been trying to compartmentalize for weeks. And then I said out loud to no one, "I'm done living in the past." It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't triumphant. It wasn't even convincing at first, but it was enough to stand up. I got in my truck and drove to my parents' house before they were even awake. My brother stepped outside. When he heard me pull in, he looked like he hadn't slept either. He didn't speak. He just waited, and I told him I wasn't going to be his best man. Not because I hated him, and not because I couldn't stand to see them together, but because standing next to him on that day would be lying to him, to her, and to myself. I wasn't healed enough. I wasn't neutral enough. I wasn't ready. He didn't argue. He didn't guilt trip. He just nodded, jaw tight, eyes a little wet. "I get it," he said quietly. "I really do." And for the first time since this whole thing began, I believed him. Before I left, I added, "But I will be there." And that was the truth. A smaller truth, maybe, but mine. The wedding day came with a sky that was too bright for my mood. I parked at the edge of the venue, watching guests arrive in suits and dresses, laughing, chatting, unaware of the quiet storm inside me. I walked in slowly, feeling every stare, every whisper that somehow made it to me. Not all of them about me. But small towns have a way of making everyone's business yours. Lauren was beautiful, more than beautiful, radiant, but that wasn't the kind of radiant that makes you fall in love again. It was the kind that makes you realize how much time has passed, how much has changed, and how you survived it. Nate caught my eye from across the room. He smiled faintly, and I nodded. That was enough. He knew I wasn't his best man, but I was there, and that had to be enough. The ceremony passed in a blur. Vows exchanged, laughter, tears. I stayed on the sidelines, quiet, observing, not intruding, not judging, not reminiscing, just being present. Afterward, I found a quiet corner, coffee in hand, and let the emotions wash over me. Nostalgia, grief, love, not all directed at them, some of it for myself. And I realized love doesn't always end neatly. It doesn't always come with apologies or happy endings. Sometimes love leaves a trace, a quiet mark, a memory that aches and comforts at the same time. Lauren caught my eye once, and we shared a small, private smile. No words, no awkwardness, just acknowledgement. A silent promise that what we had mattered, and that it had shaped us both. I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel healed. But I felt something closer to peace. Because life moves forward. Because people grow, change, make mistakes, and survive. Because love, in all its messy, complicated forms, leaves you stronger if you let it. I took a deep breath and stepped back into the crowd, ready to watch my brother start his new life, ready to start moving forward in my own. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like I was losing. I just felt like I was finally living again.